All right, you're here to learn the Bible, so let's learn how to read the Bible together. We're in Proverbs chapter 4, starting in verse 13. In the last Bible study walkthrough, we ended in verse 12, right, where Solomon, the wise king of Israel, at least in his time as he's writing this, he's telling his son, or those who will be children of wisdom, when you walk, your step will not be hampered, and if you run, you will not stumble. So what we're going to do is continue in verse 13, and when you read the Bible, my biggest tip to you, if you're going to learn essential Bible study skills that help you make sense of the scriptures and take you deeper into the meaning of the text, you need to know how to read things in context. So this verse right here, verse 13, is going to continue expanding upon or clarifying or even adding to the ideas put forth in the previous verses, right? So we ended with Solomon saying, when you walk, your step will not be hampered. When you walk, that has to be a conditional thing. It can't just be some general, hey, when you live, your step will not be hampered, and when you run, you'll never stumble, right? This has to be attached to some condition, which he's already laid out in verse 4 through 11, where Solomon has talked about accepting his words, walking in the wisdom that he's taught the son, and walking in the path of uprightness that he's led his son on, right? And when you walk and when you run, these different ways of explaining how to live, he tells his son, when you walk by wisdom, these things won't happen. And now we have verse 13, keep hold of instruction. Do not let go. So I want you to see that there's two actions that are commanded of the son who's listening or reading, right? There's two things. Number one, hey, keep hold of instruction. But he takes it a step further. Notice how this second action takes this first action farther. Number two, don't let go. Because the son could easily keep hold of instruction, right? Which is right here. But he can also choose to let go. So Solomon clarifies, also don't let go. So this adds to the previous thing that was said. So when you read the Bible and you see multiple actions, multiple commands, a list of things, maybe the same idea repeating, pay attention to how the second, instance of that word or idea makes sense of or clarifies the first action in the list or the first description in the list, right? Usually the list expands upon each other, and specifically here, what's being held on to is what? It's instruction. And there's my dog barking in the background. Hopefully she won't do that anymore. Don't let go of what? Instruction. The instruction that he's already given his son, right? So now we find ourselves in the end of verse 13, actually. Hopefully you can see it. And it won't get in the way. There we go. Okay. Guard her. So now we have a third action. Third thing that the son or whoever's reading or listening to this wisdom is called to do, right? Hold on to wisdom. Don't let go, and guard her. So this third action, right, there's three things Solomon is calling people to do with instruction or wisdom, right? He's saying, hold on to her, don't let go, and actually protect or guard. Now this third action, right, it explains a different dimension of how we should function in relationship with wisdom, right? So wisdom here, the instruction put forth, is referred to as a she, right? She is your life. Now the word for here is something you should pay attention to. It functions as a sort of because, or the reason is she's your life. So it's as if you're guarding life. It's as if you're holding on to and not letting go of life. So wisdom becomes the way into real abundant life, if not synonymous with the abundant life that God has for us. Right? So if you, right, hold on, guard, don't let go of wisdom and instruction, she ends up being your life. So pay attention to not just what is said, but why we're told to do it. So in other words, let me show you what I mean. We're told what to do. That's the wisdom applied, right? We're told to guard wisdom, to hold on, to not let go. But the reasoning or the understanding behind that command is that she's actually your life. In other words, when you see the word for or because in Scripture, and that it becomes a reason to do something or a reason someone does something, that becomes the understanding or the insight into what is happening or into, what you should do. Okay, so do not enter the path of the wicked. Now, what we have to ask is this command, I'm going to highlight in yellow because it's a negative command, right? And like I said already, this verse, just like the previous one, is going to relate to what's already been said. So initially, it sounds like a disconnected idea. It talks about protecting and guarding and holding on to wisdom, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, don't enter the path of the wicked. Don't walk in the way of the evil. So again, we have two commands that are, given to the Son. Do not what? Do not enter the path of the wicked. That's command number 1. Then we have do not walk in the way of the evil. That's command number 2. Now, what we have to ask is, are these two different ideas? Or is this second action, the second command, is it an expansion of the first command? Is it built on or connected to the first command at all? Because again, when you see the word and, I'm going to highlight this in orange for you. When you see the word and, that's a connector, right? It's letting you know it's connecting two different ideas. And in this case, if my dog doesn't stop barking, I'm going to lose my mind. In this case, it's connecting two different actions or commands that are given to the wise, son who's reading or listening to this wisdom. Don't enter the path of the wicked and don't walk in the way of the evil. Is this different than entering the path of the wicked? I think walking becomes a progression of entering. Let's think about this. This is why we meditate on the Scriptures, because it's one thing to enter into the path of the wicked, right? Almost like you're entering into a room where there's just a bunch of wicked people, there's a way of life that's happening. It's another thing to end up engaging in what they're doing and living the way they're living, which is to walk in the way of the evil, okay? So the wicked and the evil here become synonymous. These are two descriptions of the same kind of person. They're wicked, they're evil. Now pay attention to the fact that there's a path and there's a way, okay? There's a path and there's a way. So let's just circle it. The path is connected to the way. And this is an evil way, and this is a wicked path. And Solomon is saying, don't enter that, don't walk in the way of the evil. Does that relate to the previous verse at all? These are things we should ask. When you read the Bible, the best thing you can learn to do is make sense of how the verse you're reading fits into the surrounding context, the cultural context, the historical context, the literary context. So for instance, he just said, guard wisdom, hold on to her. How does that idea of wisdom being your life connect to this idea of don't walk and live like the wicked or the evil? Don't go anywhere near their path, right? Well, it seems like, let's keep reading. He says avoid it. So there's a third command. Not just don't enter it, not just don't walk into it, but don't even go anywhere near it. Avoid it entirely. Do not, and I'm going to highlight in yellow the word or the phrase do not. Do you know why I did that? Because I noticed that these are a few repeating words within the same two verses. 3 times the phrase do not is used, emphasizing there's something Solomon is trying to spare someone from doing, right? That has to do with guarding wisdom. In other words, here's where the answer comes into the question. How does verse 14 relate to what was said in verse 13? Guarding wisdom and wisdom being your life looks like practically not going on the path of the wicked. You can't simultaneously walk in life and in wisdom, right, while walking on the path of the wicked. You can't simultaneously guard wisdom and love her as your life while you're walking in the way of evil. Actually, guarding wisdom is going to look like, and I want to connect this for you, it's going to look like avoiding it entirely, avoiding evil, right? You can't, because to fear the Lord is to turn away from evil. You can't love wisdom and evil at the same time. Wisdom and the life she offers is the counter opposite of the evil and the wicked and this way that the enemies of God are walking on. So avoid it. Do not go on it. Okay? Don't even play around with it. It's like fire. Don't even get close to the fire. I have to tell my kids that all the time, right? So there are some things that you shouldn't even play around with. Don't play with fire. Don't even see how close you can get to the line of sin. Avoid it entirely. Turn away from it and pass on. So he just gave you in one verse 4 different actions. 4. Avoid the path of evil. Turn away from it. Don't go on it. Pass on. All of these different descriptions or action words and verbs, they end up emphasizing a different way we should relate to this path of evil and the path of the wicked. Avoid it. That's easy enough. Don't go on it. Well, that emphasizes like completely it's not something you want to be on, or turn away from it. Avoiding something is like, oh, don't want to be around that. Turning away from something is to go the opposite direction. Passing on, right, indicates that it's presenting itself to you and saying, come, and you're moving right along. And what's interesting is in chapter 5, I'm going to give you a sneak peek. In chapter 5, we're going to see the same language used of the adulterous woman who's forbidden, and she's inviting people to come in and engage with her. Same language is going to be used of the way of the evil, the path of the wicked, and the adulterous forbidden woman. So it's something to think about. Sometimes in Scripture, and I'm gonna end here for you. Sometimes in Scripture, the biblical authors will lay ideas in what's called seed form, meaning they're planting ideas that they're going to expand upon later in their writings and build on that and develop that, but they're giving you the ideas up front. This idea of staying away from evil, avoiding it, that's going to be unpacked more throughout the wisdom literature, especially in chapter 5. So when you read the Bible, think about when you get later into the books that you're reading. Let's say you're in John's Gospel and you're on chapter 18. Think about what you're reading and say, is there any ideas I see here that I've already seen presented in earlier chapters in a more basic form, right? These are helpful tools that have really helped me develop my ability to read the Bible, which is when I read Scripture early in the book of the Bible I'm reading, I'll pay attention to ideas. I'll try and like keep tabs on it so that later in the book, if I see those ideas brought up again, I'll ask questions like, is this idea being developed more? Is it being unpacked more? Because here, walking in the path of the wicked and the evil, avoiding it, that's going to be unpacked in a clearer sense and in a more practical example when we get to the forbidden woman. All right, so I'm really just trying to give you a few tools, help you develop a few skills along the way as you read the Bible. But the biggest takeaway today is think about how each verse connects to what comes before it and what comes after it, right? So guarding wisdom, holding on to her, is going to look like avoiding certain things. That's what it's going to look like practically. You can't hold on to wisdom in one hand and evil in the other. You got to choose which way you're going to walk and what path you're going to enter in and live in. All right, so I hope this Bible study walkthrough is helpful. More than just telling you what the text says, I'm trying to help you see how to read the Bible. And if you want to learn how to read the Bible in depth at your own pace, we have a completely free 40-day Bible study program you can take linked in this YouTube description below. It's on our website, abovereproachministry.com. We also have an 11-day and a 27-day completely free to you because of generous supporters who make this ministry possible. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next Bible study walkthrough.